My name is MoneyMitch26, and what I want to candidly do here is introduce my next guest. This was one of the most emotional interviews I've ever done, let alone on this show. And I think something that adds to that is the fact that this was done in person. I know the show's still called Top of the Pop, but this one was done in real life at the LAN event, Echo Arena. I'll put links to, I did a whole vlog on that show in the event if you want to go check that out. But what this is about is this next guest and the story we just get a little glimpse into, but that little glimpse shows us so much about this person's personal journey in and out of the arena, how they've become the person they are now, the loud, proud, bright, vibrant person we see wasn't always like that. And for a lot of people, perhaps even you, it's a real journey to find one's own voice and be okay putting yourself out there. And to the extent that this person has done, which is build a career out of putting themselves out there and being involved in these kind of communities and being one of those people. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope it comes across in the conversation when you watch it as well, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Without further ado, let's get into it. Hello, my name is MoneyMitch26, and this is Top of the Pop, another episode. I'm doing IRL in real life, and today, sorry, that a bit intense.
No, this.
Sorry, no take
I mean, the whole intro, I'm sorry.
That's fine, it's fine. Top of the Pop, MoneyMitch26, and this is Psychaotic.
Yeah,
Sorry, no, you say your name.
No, Psychaotic. There's an A in there for all of you that keep calling me psychotic.
Nice. How are you?
I'm so good, dude. You know what? This was a lost cause. Hey, guys, I do cool things on VRZaida. I'll probably talk about that at some point. That's their logo. Done, advertising.
All right,
but yeah,
nice.
So I'm good, man. I'm good. A bit tired. I made the amateur move of staying up way too late on the first night of LAN, but that's okay. But got up today, and I am so ready for everything that's going to happen.
Who are you looking forward to hanging out with the most while you're here?
Oh my God. I don't know, man. Everybody. There's so many new faces at this LAN. You know, I've been to 2 Redshift LANs in the past. I went to this Tyra LAN. And each time there's been more faces, but I feel like with every event there's more new faces. And so, yeah, getting to meet a bunch of the Canadian folk. So I guess offbeat, original, Strem. I'm sorry to every other Canadian I missed. But yeah.
And how many LANs have you done at this point? Because we've met before at LAN, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. We met, I think, Tyra LAN, right? Yeah,
Tyra
that was
LAN,
the one
yeah.
you were at. Yeah, so I went to the Redshift one in January, I went to Tyra LAN, and then I also went to the Pittsburgh LAN. Yeah, those are the only 3 I have under my belt so far.
And what's keeping you coming to these? Because that's a few.
The people.
Yeah.
It really, you know, people talk about Echo Arena having one of the best communities out there in terms in the gaming space, and it's true. Once you find your people, it is so tight. And I VC with these people. I'm messaging them on Discord every day, and to see them in person, hang out with them in person, play Echo with them in person. That's what keeps me coming back. It's the people, hands down.
How did Psychaotic get into Echo?
Well, the year was 2020, and there's this little thing going around. You may have heard of it called COVID. And so, you know, with all the lockdowns, and I was in school at the time, keeping everybody in their rooms basically. I could not do that. I thought I was an introvert, and then for the first 3 weeks of COVID, it was fantastic, and then I was like, nope, I miss people, I miss being social, I need to talk to other humans. So I got into VR, and so I got VR, and at first it was just a Beat Saber machine. It was all Beat Saber only. And just on a whim, I downloaded Echo Arena, and I was so hooked. The social element was exactly what I was looking for. I also grew up playing soccer and basketball, and you know, having that sport element of the game, the strategy element of the game, really appealed to me. And so I've been hooked ever since on Echo.
Soccer, and what was the other sport?
Basketball.
Basketball. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I've coached those, I've played those, sports runs my whole life, my whole family. And so to finally have another game like that I could do, because I completely destroyed both my left leg and my right shoulder playing sports, So I could not, I couldn't do the running part anymore of those games, but the standing and the throwing and feeling like you're in that space, that's super appealing to me about Echo.
So you've come into the community with a very like competitive.
That is an understatement. I'm so competitive. It is probably not healthy, and I'll be the first to admit it.
But you've got great energy. Like the energy you bring, I imagine you bring it to the field as well when you're playing.
Yeah. I mean, I've captained multiple teams at this point, and that is the biggest thing that you can bring in. You can bring your skill, and you can bring your mental. And if your mental's not good, your skill's not going to do good. So coming in with that good attitude, being encouraging of your teammates, having that kind of energy is so crucial, as well as competitive, right? Like, sometimes you're down by a couple of points, and it's kind of easy to get stuck in that. But if you have that drive to keep pushing, you are even better at this game. And so I'm glad that I found a good outlet for that competitiveness.
So were you playing soccer and basketball 2019?
No, I was not.
No.
So I started playing soccer when I was like, what, 4 years old? And then I played it up through high school, which was when I messed up my shoulder. I was a goalkeeper.
Right.
And so at that point, it was like, well, do I focus on school at this point, or do I keep going with sports? Because I was also super involved in academics, and I was like, maybe the injury is just kind of the sign we're going the academic route. So I gave up the sports for a couple of years, and then I got the headset during COVID, and yeah, this is my sport now.
And academics, what were you studying?
I studied robotics engineering, actually.
Whoa.
Which is,
Whoa.
which is weird. I really enjoyed the program, and I enjoyed it, but now I work in esports, so like...
You work in esports?
I do.
So for you, this is a full-time gig?
Yeah, not for VRML. I currently work for Virtual Athletics League, which is another league operation thing, but they do have a couple of leagues, but they focus more on tournaments and creator promotion of games. It's an interesting business model, but it works.
What games?
Well, the leagues that we currently run are Rec Room Paintball and Knock.
Amazing.
Yeah. So.
Sorry, paintball and?
Rec Room Paintball and Knock, the archery game.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really fun game.
Okay. That'd be great. So do you play Knock as well?
Not well.
Just because people have mentioned it when I talk about, I'd like to ask what other sports, because Echo's not the only VR sport. No. What other games are around, and people often mention Knock. That's generally one that comes up a lot.
It is. It's definitely, it's an awesome game from a competitive standpoint. I feel like they're in the early stages of that competitive space, which means the meta's still evolving, and people, the community is still finding itself, which is nice, but I have big visions for Knock.
You do have big visions for it?
Yeah. Just like I do Echo Arena.
Yeah. Do you see any other games popping up? Are you aware of any other VR sports?
So I played a lot of FPS games, Pancake, before I got into VR. Right. And it's just, those skills did not translate going into VR, which is interesting.
Interesting, yeah.
But there's a couple of those games as well that I have vision for. I think Rec Room Paintball is an interesting space, but also one that should not be overlooked in terms of that stuff, because like Echo, Rec Room has a super social aspect to it, obviously. I mean, have you played Rec Room?
Cool. Yeah.
It tends to be a bit of a younger audience, but it's got that social element that makes a community strong, which then in turn drives community esport things. Because you think about VRML, it's all volunteers, and everything from moderation to casting to creating content to then like further promote the league to getting these sponsors to all of our social media presence, all volunteer based, and that all comes from a passionate community. So when we're in the early stages of VR esports like we are right now, that community aspect is so huge because it really requires the players to get things in motion, to be driven to drive their game to that next step. And that's something that I see in Rec Room Paintball, which gets a lot of looks when I say that. But you got to look at the passion of the community as a huge aspect as to whether or not you're going to be able to drive that game into esports.
So I'm fully following that. You need the passion from the community for the volunteership to get people to know about this.
Well, yes, because it does start with volunteers. That's I wish we were at a level where like you could start a VR esports program and just immediately pump money into it, but it's just not there yet. And that's the fact of the matter. We're not as big as Rocket League. We're not as big as Overwatch. We're not as big as League of Legends. So it really requires the players to want to put that effort into building their games community, building their competitive scene, because it's not just the volunteering in a stricter sense of like volunteering to run a league. It's also making the game bigger, whether they're streaming it on Twitch or they're putting out cool highlight videos that that we see on in Echo a lot on YouTube. That kind of stuff brings new eyes to the game, which is important.
What do you think is the biggest thing stopping new eyes seeing the game at the moment?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
So we need new eyes on the game. What do you think is, what hurdles do you see? Because you're in this space, right?
Yes.
You're thinking about this all the time. And one thing that we require to get it to where we want it to be is more viewership, increased viewership.
So I have a question for you, actually, before I get into this. Do you watch Twitch streams of any games?
Not really. I watch Echo, obviously.
Why do you watch Echo?
Because I play it.
That right there.
That's it.
You watch it because you play it. It's really difficult to get people to watch a game that they have no active participation in, especially in esports. With regular with regular IRL sports, we just have a culture of following sport teams, but that's not there yet for esports. And so therefore, to get eyes on those games, you have to get people to play those games, and that all goes hand in hand with the volunteer content creation and getting word out about those games, because that draws new people in, which then creates new viewers for these streams, which gets the eyes of sponsors, which then pumps money into the community and the competitive scene. But like that right there is people all the time like, oh, how do we get more people to watch Echo? It's not just getting people to watch Echo. You've got to get people into Echo so they realize it's worth watching.
What do you think is stopping people getting into Echo?
I think the Quest 2 did wonders in terms of expanding the VR audience and player base as a whole across the board. It's just not quite enough yet, because it's become really standard for people to have either a PC or one of these consoles, right? And so you have enough of your friends that have them that you can then play together, in these select games. But out of your IRL friends, who do you play VR with? You don't actually have to name names, but like.
Yeah, currently none.
Exactly,
right now.
Exactly. And so it's not, that was my phone, I'm okay. I'm just a mess in the mornings. No, but like that's my point. You've got to, it's not, sometimes it's not, it doesn't come down to the game. It doesn't come down to the volunteers sometimes. It doesn't come down to anything other than the fact that we need more people to have headsets to get into these games. And which, we're getting there. We're getting there with the Quest 2. There's going to be the PICO 4 coming out, even though it's not for American markets. There's going to be the Quest, what?
I didn't even know that.
Oh yeah, the PICO 4 is not being yet. They said they have no plans to release it in America as of yet. I would assume that means they'll have some sort of like enterprise equivalent at some point, similar to the Quest Pro, and that will be more focused on the American markets. It's interesting. I've been following this whole PICO build-up because they're getting into a lot of like games that are huge in North America, but it's like you're not releasing a headset in North America.
Where's the funding come? I'm assuming you've read into it, as you say. Do you know where the funding has come to develop that headset? For example, with the Quest, we've got a giant like Meta behind it, pumping the research and the energy into that.
I'm like 99% sure PICO is in part. Is that? Hi.
Yeah, Psychaotic. Where am I going?
You're going to floor 3.
Down.
And then you will just walk around the floor. You'll find it.
Okay.
I have no idea who that was.
It seemed fun though.
Yeah, it was. Dude, I'm sorry, I'm going to totally derail this conversation because that exact there is an example of the things that I've been like telling people happen. I am so bad with names and faces. I'm awful. Like, no offense to anyone. I could see them at like the second or third LAN, and I'm still like, what's the name on the back of that jersey?
I think everyone's got to print out their profile picture.
Yeah.
That would help, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Just stick on there.
I have a shirt with me that has my logo on it. I was going to wear it either today or tomorrow. I decided today I'm repping VRZaida. Oh my God, what were we saying? I had no practice this morning.
PICO.
No, okay, he came over. I have this problem with names and faces, and it's like so many times because I cast and I'm involved so much, people are like, oh, Psychaotic, like, can I give you a hug? Nice to meet you, can we take a picture? And I'm like, I don't know you. Like, I'm sure I know you, like, in Discord and in-game, but it's like, I don't recognize faces, so I'm just like, yes, it's so great to see you. Oh my goodness. And then I'm like giving them a hug, peeking around their jersey, like, oh yes, that's so-and-so. And that sounds so egotistical. I know it does. It sounds awful, but like...
But it's true though. It's where you've put yourself, like speaking humbly, you put yourself in a position where your face is being seen by a lot of people. When you go on VRML, like I've just started casting, and it's kind of weird to go from my own cast where I've got 5 people watching me, and even if I have 5 people, I get a bit nervous, like, oh, people are actually watching me. To then go on VRML, when we shared a cast, we had like 300 people watching live.
Less than that, but it was a significant number.
But it's, 200-300 more than what I was normally getting.
Significantly more, and it's weird because you start casting and then people start recognizing you in pubs and you're like, oh yes, I do that. It's interesting. But PICO, right. So
yes.
I wish I could Google it right now. I'm pretty sure PICO's owned by by ByteDance, or in part was funded by ByteDance, which
I
is...
get a feeling as well, but I didn't want to jump to that conclusion.
I remember reading that somewhere, so like, if it's not true, don't quote me. I remember reading that somewhere, and that is, ByteDance is the company that owns TikTok.
Yes.
And if that is true, that is
Which already has a history with like the American market, right? And
yeah. Well, TikTok also, like even before this and getting formally into the VR space, you think about a whole bunch of TikTok filters and things, they're huge into AR already. So jumping to the VR space is kind of a logical next step for that. So it's going to be interesting without it releasing in America, because so many people are building this up to be the Quest killer, you know, because everybody's, you know, Meta doesn't exactly have the greatest relationship with its customers, so people are desperate to jump to something new. But if they're not releasing in America, we're kind of gonna, well, we are, you're not, but we're gonna be stuck with Quest 2 for a while.
I'm interested to see how it plays out. I've seen, I mean, my YouTube, the algorithms, I'm in like the like product review area. So as soon as it came out, like bam, bam, video, review, better than the Quest 2, better, blah, 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 blah. But, you know, you just gotta, it's a fad, it's the phase, it's the trend right now. So I just gotta see how that plays out.
Yeah.
How much of the market do they actually take, and does it build the market, or does it just eat into the Quest 2, or probably both?
I feel like it's going to build it a bit.
Yeah.
Because, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not in Europe, so I don't know, but like Europe's had its issues with Meta's privacy stuff, right? Like I've read about that several times. So for a company with a more publicly cleaner, you know, presence and does not have the whole Meta history behind it, it might draw more people in that were concerned about the Meta privacy stuff. I don't know. I feel like with every headset, you know, even if it's the same people buying it every time, it's still going to help in a way, because then they're telling their friends about it. Their friends are going to come, you know, come try it, and it's going to build it overall. It just might take a while.
So I want to bring it back to you, right? How did you go from robotics to esports? As a career?
Yeah, so...
Because there's, the average person comes along, they play the game, they might even get into competitive, they just play for pubs, hour to a week, that's it. But what you've done is the extreme of the extreme. Competitive, then casting, modding as well? Community mod?
Yeah.
Other communities as well? Yeah, you've really gone deep into this niche.
I certainly have. Oh my goodness, I did not realize just how into it I was until you outlined all that. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I do casting on VRZaida for different things. I cast the VR Girls League on VRZaida. I used to be a VRML mod and then governor. I cast for VRML now and for NEPA. I have gone to the extreme, but it comes back to COVID, honestly. I was studying robotics, and then I had an internship during COVID, and it was just miserable. Like, it was... I really enjoy robotics engineering and what I was studying and some of the projects I've been on, but that specific internship, I was just so miserable. I was like, I need to get out of engineering for a little bit. This is not working.
So it wasn't even the people or the team, it was the idea of having a career of that?
No. I mean, I don't want to badmouth anybody. It was definitely some people that I worked with that made that experience what it was. And it was, I do plan to get back to it. I just needed to take some time away from it. And then at the same time, I was getting more involved with Echo. I became a mod, I became a governor. I was more ingrained into the community, even competitive side. And I was just like, you know what, this has been my escape for so long. And I was working for VRML, and then somebody recommended me for a position at where I currently work. And I pursued that, and here I am.
And for anyone watching this that, say like 1,000 people watch this, one of them will be like super Psychaotic fan. How do I do what you do? What kind of advice, or would you say if they want to make a career out of this, out of just enjoying this game?
I feel like I got lucky, right? And I'll be the first to admit that I got lucky with this position, you know, falling into my lap, and I was able to make a career out of it. But if you're looking for those first steps, getting involved is where it starts. Remember how I talked about earlier? Not just the volunteering, but just the content creation, like everything that goes into building a community. Getting involved in some aspect of that is those next steps. You know, whether it be you want to get involved as a moderator, you want to get into the casting team, it all builds from there. So starting small, and then building your way up from that, building your own reputation, what you do, making those connections within the space, that's how that gets done.
Nice. Have you always, because your energy, I think that's a key thing about you, and that's why people spot you and go, yeah, I know that person. Because your energy is just so like contagious and just good. It's like warm and it's inviting. Where am I going with this?
I don't know, where are we going?
Yeah, I really leaned into that compliment there.
Thank you. I felt it, thank you.
Have you always been like that? Growing up, doing your sports, doing your basketball and football?
Man. It's honestly, okay, we're gonna get into the deep psychaotic lore for a second here. It's honestly been something I've had to work on. Yeah. Like me personally, I have always been super introverted, and I'm like super reserved. I deal with anxiety. I'm the first to admit it. That's so bizarre here. I know. It's bad, and so at times it is. But it's for these events, and when I put on the headset, I realize I don't have to be that kind of like shell that I am in person. And Echo, like, oh my God, I'm gonna tear up. Echo's like actually helped me become a bigger person. Becoming more confident with myself. I would like, when I first started Echo, if you told me I was going to be putting my face in front of like 300 people on a stream, I would have cried. and
run the show as well.
Yeah,
you know, when
exactly.
You came on the other night, it was me and H Penny.
Yeah.
You came on and your energy just like woke us up. Oh, okay, yeah, we're casting.
Yeah, it has not always been that way. I've always been super introverted, super anxious, but like when I put on the psychaotic persona, it's not even a persona, that's the wrong word, but
it's you
when I step into those shoes, yes. I feel more alive. There's more energy. I'm more comfortable because these are the people that I've been hanging out with in headset for so long. So even here in person, I can have that energy, that confidence, and yeah.
So, you know Wiggles?
I love Wiggles.
I had a really good conversation with Wiggles.
Yeah.
And this was one of the things that came up about everyone has their own challenges in, I'm doing this, I'll explain in a minute, but everyone has their own challenges of opening up and what we were specifically speaking about was TikTok and making a first post. And because Wiggles brought up about how personally she struggled with her voice. Yeah. She was self-conscious about having her voice on camera on TikTok and worrying the world's going to end. As soon as people hear my voice, the world's going to blow up, I'm going to die and it's all going to be over. Yeah. Finally, she plucked up the courage to do it. I'm still here. I didn't die. Okay, exactly. Let me do another one. So can you relate to that experience? Did that happen for you? Because casting, did something lead up to casting? Did you do any kind of like content or ways of building your confidence?
Like really, I'll get into how I started casting first. I'm sorry, second, but oh my goodness, what was the first question?
Confidence, how you built your confidence,
right,
and that journey
that moment. It was getting on my first VRML cast. Because up until that point, I could count on one hand the number of people that had seen my face in the Echo space. And it was this weird thing where I was like, I want to stay behind this Discord account, anonymity. I can run how I run, do what I do. Nobody needs to know anything about me. I don't need to put too much personality out there. I can just exist, basically. And that moment of stepping into a VRML cast for the first time, having my camera on, casting these games, I think it really didn't hit me until I cast my first master match and it was like the viewer count was like over 100, that it really hit me like, this is my moment of here I am. Like I'm not just part of the faces anymore of the community, one of our 4,000 players. I'm here, I'm present, and I want to be involved at the most core levels.
So how was that after your first cast? When you finished, goodbye, thanks everyone.
Oh dude, I literally, you've been on cast before, like we turn off the cameras, we get off stream and we talk for a couple minutes, and it's like, okay, bye, I'm gonna go about my evening. I finished that cast, turned off my camera, and just kind of like sat there and broke for a minute. This is so sad talking about, but I just was like, oh my God. It was like a combination of relief and anxiety finally washing off me about it. It was like, it's done, I've done it, I've done it. And it's out there, I can't take it back, but I'm happy with the result. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredibly relatable, first of all. But yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah.
I think what I was fishing for, or what I was trying to feel out was what put you over the line to doing it. Like, fuck it, I'll just do it. What was going on in your life at the time? So like
So, okay, it was kind of a huge combination of things. It started when I was a mod. Because I got to the point, in my first season, I went from having never played Echo before to winning the challenge, or not winning the Challenger Cup, participating in the Challenger Cup. I wish we won. LANada, you know what you did. And then I saw all ranges of the ladder. I'm not saying any of this to brag, I'm just saying I saw all ranges of the ladder within one season. I got up into competitive. I started getting a feel for the more competitive scene. And I started realizing, I was like, there are holes in the system. Like there are breaks in the rules. There are things that need to be cleaned up. And at first I just started whining about it, and then people were like, well, you have good ideas to fix it, go be a mod. And it was just like this light bulb moment that I was like, oh yeah, I could just actually like do something about this. And so I kind of sat on that for a little bit, and then I realized, I was like, look, I'm too competitive. I cannot function in this space without making good changes for it, because I can't keep existing under the system. So that was the first push into being a mod, and then the push into being a caster was, as a moderator, I was more involved, meeting more people, dealing with more tickets, helping more people, asking me rules questions. I was in the Ask Here channel all the time. And then it was like, you know what, I've kind of already basically put myself out there. Why not just kind of put myself all the way out there and see what happens? Because I was so happy with what I had been doing so far. I was like, let's kick it up a notch, and on a whim.
So was it a case of you hadn't wanted to at that point?
I had not.
It wasn't about reservations. It was about there was no reason to.
Both. It was both. It was I was reserved, and then I was also like, there's no point in doing this, and I'm shy, so like, why bother?
You're not shy.
Well, not anymore. Yeah, it was one of those moments. It was like, I just want to be all the way out there at this point. I'm like, because I was getting more and more confident with people. I was getting more and more comfortable. I was like, okay, I'm ready.
How many casts have you done at this point? Would you know?
It's actually not that many. I only got started with casting in season 4. We're on 5. 4 or 5. Late 4, early 5. Hey, I've only done about 90 games.
Right.
But only 90 games through VRML. I cast on VRZaida. I used to cast on the old VRGL channel. I cast for NEPA now as well. But in terms of like formally casted games, I've only got about 90. Palador and Dimwee, I think, are at around 800, 900.
Insane.
Like,
I think Dimwee's around there. I'm pretty sure when I
Palador's
last
probably
checked,
over 1,000.
beyond 1,000.
Yeah.
I'm pretty, maybe I need to fact check that.
No, that sounds right,
1,000.
honestly, that sounds right. But like, I'm, in terms of the people that have been around the casting community for, since the beginning, I'm still that in their presence, and I'm okay with that. But seeing what they were building for themselves, that's part of what pushed me into it as well.
And do you have any advice for people getting into casting? Perhaps they've already started, or like the cohort that was me recently.
So if you just want, if you're looking to just kind of get into it and see if you like it, you don't need a fancy mic, you don't need a fancy headset. What you need to do is just get in there. Like, go install Spark, open a pub, and just start casting. And it doesn't, you don't have to stream it. You can just by yourself practice if you want. You can record yourself privately and then listen to it back, give yourself feedback, and keep going from there. But like, to get into casting, it starts with little things, and then you can start casting on your own channel privately, and then you can start reaching out to some VRML games. You're like, hey, can I community cast you guys? And it's little steps, or you can just go nuts and go right into VRML. I've had a couple of people do that, but if you're nervous about it and just want to look at like first little baby steps, that's what I would recommend doing.
And just zooming out here, zoom out. What are you curious about in terms of your career that you're very much on now?
Yeah.
In esports, or just like the VR industry as a whole, or maybe specific to esports? What are you seeing from afar? You're like, I want to check that out.
I'm wondering what Meta's marketing strategy is right now for VR esports. And hear me out. This is a whole rant that I've gone on before, so brace yourself. But
I'm ready.
For game to be successful, in my opinion, part of what makes it successful is it fully utilizes the platform that it's on. So with a lot of, you think of traditional pancake games, let's talk about Rocket League for a second. Rocket League is so cool. You cannot go outside and drive a car into a soccer ball and push it into a goal. Like, it takes advantage of these worlds that it can create, and the fact that it's a virtual space. And so in my opinion, for video games to successfully evolve from that, VR games need to fully take advantage of the fact that they are VR and use the fullest extent of their platform. There's not many games, in my opinion, that are doing that as a focus or doing it well enough. Echo Arena is one of them that's doing it fantastic. You're never going to get that zero gravity climbing feel, throwing feel in a video game. You're never going to get that active element. FPS games give it a whole new level of immersion. But there's so many games that it's like, the sport games in particular is what I want to pick on for a second. I'm sorry, my brain's all over the place. I'm coming back centered.
No, take your time.
So the sport games is what I want to pick on in particular because sports exists in real life. And yes, sports is fun to play in VR. It's a cool thing to do with your friends. But as for an esport, I don't think it's unique enough to draw in a new audience. Like, I don't know if you've ever gone through the social media posts of a lot of these like big sport games in VR, like NFL's coming out with this game. And I looked through their announcement post on Facebook, and the comments were all, or you could just go outside, or you could just go outside, go touch grass, you could throw a football outside, you don't need VR for this. And like that's my point right there, is you can use those kinds of games to maybe pull in new audiences, but I don't think you're going to be able to build a successful esport out of it unless it adds something new to the genre, new to the platform. And that's why things like Knock and Echo Arena and Rec Room Paintball are things that have my eyes, because they take advantage of the fact that they're in VR and do things that you cannot do in real life. I don't remember what your question was. That was, oh, right, so Meta, right, okay, what I want to know. So Meta has been putting a lot of meta funding into these bigger titles that are traditional sport games, and I'm curious, like, why that is. Like, yes, everybody sees NFL, or at least everybody in America sees NFL, and it's something they recognize, and that's, the familiarity might draw them in, but I feel like it would be more successful to expand on the platform, expand on the genres into something.
I'd say it's just the IP. It's the IP that people, they know what basketball is, they know what NFL is.
Exactly, it's familiarity that draws them in, but I'm curious when they're going to start considering esports is what it needs to be, as something new, something fresh, something that implements new strategies.
When it sells, when it makes someone money.
Exactly. No, that is the sad reality, is right now we're just not. That's why I said it earlier, Meta needs to get more headsets in more people's hands, and I get that, and that's probably what the sport games are for. It's this vicious cycle where we can't grow until we do. Like Echo can't grow until VR users grow, and VR users can't grow until we get more games, and more games won't come until we have more of an audience for the developers to market to. And it's this very weird cycle that Meta's working hard to break us out of, but being stuck in that right now is not awesome.
Do you see that changing in 5-10 years?
I do. New development studios are opening up. We've got new games being ported over to VR, even if it's just within Steam. We're finally hitting the point of accessibility with some of these price points, right? So you think about all the OGs and the ones that have been around for a while. It was so much more expensive to get into. You needed your whole PC rig, and then you also needed the super expensive headset, and that's not something that most people just had the money to drop on. But now, with these standalone headsets, with the PICO going to be like, what, 300, the Quest is down to 300, 400, it's finally at an accessible price point to bring it to the masses. It's just a matter of marketing these things to get them into their hands. So I do see it changing, I think, with more exposure to it.
And you personally, do you see yourself along for the ride, right? You're gonna follow this industry grow? Yeah,
I think so. I don't think I've totally found my fit yet. Echo has always been my home. I do love my job, don't get me wrong, but Echo's what's got me started, and Echo's the thing that I'm always going to have my biggest eye on. You know?
How long have you been paid to play esports?
I've never been to play esports.
Yeah.
Never at this position.
No.
I mean,
what way is the position exactly? Is it community management or?
It's league moderator, manager, and broadcasting manager. Okay. So I'm more in charge of running the moderator programs for our leagues and the streams. I do so much more than that. That's not part of my job title. But bottom line, that's what I do. I got my first payment for playing the other day, and it's like the weirdest thing, because I subbed in a couple of programs for NEPA, and that got me paid, and it was like, look, Mom, I'm getting paid to play video games. You told me it never happened. It was like nothing substantial in the slightest, but it was just more funny on principle.
So we have things kicking off downstairs very soon, so I do want to wrap this up. Sure. However, I'd love to do a part 2.
Absolutely. Do that
remotely. Yeah. Actually do it on top of the popcorn.
Absolutely,
in the arena. But final question.
Yeah.
Are you aware of Elon Musk's Neuralink chip that he wants to put in everyone's head? Well, he doesn't run it, but he's offering that. Are you aware of this?
I'm aware of this.
Chip or no chip?
I'm gonna wait till somebody else tests it out first and then make up my mind. I'm not opposed to it in concept. I'm gonna make sure somebody gets it and it's safe and it works correctly before I do it.
That's the correct
I volunteer Phenom. He's the one that's testing the pro controllers for all of us too. I'm sure if we pay for his Neuralink, he'll get that as well.
But if I had to force an answer, if it was binary, chip or no chip, never have the chip or someday have the chip.
Someday have the chip. I'll go with that.
Yes, nice.
Yeah.
Amazing,
Yeah,
awesome,
thank
absolute
you.
pleasure to speak to you, and I'm not joking, I mentioned it a couple of times already, your energy,
Oh, thank you.
it's incredible.
Thank you.
And it's what this community needs.
Yeah.
When I say this community, I'm not even talking about Echo, I mean just generally gaming community.
Yeah.
You need, when you're positive yourself, when you have positivity inside you, you've got to shout it.
Yeah.
You've got to be that beacon,
Yeah.
and you're smashing it.
Thank you so much. This was so fun. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, sorry to rush it as well.
No
To long as out.
worries.